Sure, it was only 6 starts, but Kyle Bradish looked awesome in his return from elbow surgery this season. Can he be that good in 2026? We'll talk about that coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Tuesday, October 28th, 2025, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are doing our season review of Kyle Bradish. Only 6 starts off elbow surgery, but those 6 starts were awesome. We're going to break down how he looked similar to his 2023 season, how he was a little bit different. We'll chat about the return from injury and how much the O's can count on him, how many innings they can get out of him in 2026. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So our Orioles season player review series continues here on the Locked On Orioles podcast as we are going from top to bottom in terms of the FanGraphs war that these players accrued in 2025. Yesterday on Monday was the Adley Rutschman season recap episode. You won't want to miss that one, so make sure to go back and check that one out if you have not already. Today we move on to Kyle Bradish, talking what went right in his season, what went wrong, and his biggest storylines heading into 2026. So we begin with what went right for Kyle Bradish this year. And first of all, it was just the stats, the production that he immediately looked like himself returning from elbow surgery, getting the Tommy John and the internal brace last season. Bradish came back in August, ended up making 6 starts this year through 32 innings and posted a 2.53 ERA with a 2.45 FIP. Really good rates as well. A 37.3% strikeout rate to go along with a 7.9% walk rate. And he posted a 1.1 WAR according to FanGraphs in just 6 starts that he made. For Kyle Bradish, 2.53 ERA, 2.45 FIP. Those would be career bests if you expanded them, over a greater part of the season and not just 6 starts. We saw the velocity basically equal to what we saw in 2023. His sinker sat 94.8 miles an hour this season. That's basically what he was at in 2023 when he finished 4th in AL Cy Young voting that year for the Orioles, made 30 starts, had a 2.83 ERA, was just incredible at the top of that O's rotation, leading them to an AL East title. That's the kind of pitcher that we saw this season coming off of elbow surgery. And sometimes, command can be the last thing to come back for pitchers. A lot of times when guys come back from Tommy John, it's not what you think it would be, but actually their stuff comes back first, and then the command takes a little longer. We saw a lot of that from Sandy Alcantara with the Marlins this year, coming back from TJ. Before his surgery, he was the command artist, and it just evaded him for multiple months this season before he finally kind of got things together in the second half for Miami. But location plus is a stat that kind of looks at, how well you're locating all of your pitches together. A 111 location plus in those 6 starts for Bradish, best of his career. His 7.9% walk rate, yes, is a little bit higher than it was in 2023, but he did have multiple starts with 0 walks, and the walk rate was down from last year in the 8 starts that he made before the surgery. And really the best thing that you can see with your eyes from those 6 starts from Bradish and that you can see through the data is just both of those breaking balls continued to be incredible. Both the slider and the curveball from the right-hander were just tremendous. Through the slider 32% of the time. It got a 44% whiff rate. Opponents had just 2 hits against it. They hit 0.63 against it this season. And then the curveball, he only threw it 13% of the time, so usage was a little bit down, but 46% whiff rate. He gave up a few hits off it, but they were basically all singles. It was 5 singles and a double. Nobody was really squaring up that curveball and hitting it very hard at all throughout the season, or at least throughout those 6 starts. And again, he was posting strikeouts at great reliever levels. And I understand when you make 6 starts and it's only 32 innings pitched, you can put up reliever type numbers. But to have a 37% K rate to go with an 8% walk rate as a starter is pretty impressive. He struck out 47 batters in those 6 starts. That was the second most strikeouts in the first 6 starts of a season in Orioles history. Only Bob Turley in the Baltimore Orioles' first season of 1954, when he struck out 53 batters in his first 6 starts that season, had more than Bradish, but Bradish did it in 19 fewer innings. That was 51 innings for Turley and 32 for Kyle Bradish. And I think the other thing, besides the fact that, hey, the stuff numbers and everything look great on the breaking balls, his four-seam fastball looked a little bit different. Now, for a while now, Bradish's sinker has been his main fastball. His four-seamer, when he was coming up through the minors and made his debut in 2022 with the Orioles, the four-seamer always had like natural cut to it. It looked like a cutter when he would throw it early in his career, but he wasn't trying to throw a cutter. It was just the way his hand was on the ball, the way his arm motion came through. It had natural cut. It happens to some guys. Their fastballs just have natural movement on them. So that is why he added the sinker around the middle of the 2022 season. It was a pitch he hadn't thrown before, but his four-seamer was getting clobbered because it had that cut and didn't have that ride action instead. So the sinker allowed him to have a fastball that went down and in and get righties out at a lot higher clip. And adding that sinker kind of changed who Kyle Bradish was as a pitcher. And eventually it became his number one fastball. Like in 2023, he threw slightly more sinkers than four-seamers. And then in 2024, when he came out there, 40% sinker, 13% four-seamer, it clearly became his number one fastball moving forward. It was still his number one pitch, 33% of the time he threw his sinker, but his four-seam usage was up to 22%. He actually threw way more four-seamers than curveballs in his 6 starts this year. And I think it's because that pitch got a little bit better because it moves a little bit differently. The cut on that pitch, it was kind of weird shape for him, but in 2025, he was up to 16.1 inches of induced vertical break and 1.6 inches of glove side movement on that four-seam fastball. If you compare that to the four-seamer he was throwing throughout 2023, that had just 12.6 inches of induced vertical break and 2.9 inches of glove side movement. Basically what that means is it was having less of that natural cut, almost half of that cutting action that it used to have. And to add to it, he had over 3 more inches of that kind of riding effect, that rising effect on the four-seam fastball that makes guys like Felix Bautista good. It makes guys like Rico Garcia good and others that we've talked about who the ball just doesn't drop as much. So it seems like it's rising throughout the zone, makes guys swing and miss or pop up or hit lazy fly balls on your fastball a lot more. Bradish really never had that on his four-seamer. 16.1 isn't elite, but it's pretty good, where 12.6 is pretty terrible in terms of ride on a fastball. You can really play when you have good velocity, you're sitting 95, and you have 16 inches of IVB. That means it's a better pitch, probably. The four-seamer was his worst pitch by run value in 2023. StatCast does a run value for every pitch. It tries to calculate how many runs did this pitch add to or cost your team. His four-seam fastball was a -6 run value that year. That means when he was throwing it, he was costing the Orioles 6 runs throughout the season. Opponents hit .362 and slugged .596 against that more cutterish four-seamer he threw in 2023. He finished 4th in Cy Young with a four-seam fastball that was that bad. Now, they still hit it kind of hard this year, but he doubled the whiff rate on that pitch. He dropped the slugging. He dropped the batting average. It's a better pitch. I'm not saying it's a dominant pitch, and his sinker is clearly still the better fastball between the sinker and the four-seamer. I'm not saying Bradish should go back to 40% four-seam fastballs. That would not be good for him, but he threw the four-seamer a little bit more because it's better. And at one point, you could almost say he really only had one fastball because he made the full switch to the sinker. I think you can say again, he has 2 fastballs, and the more pitches, the more fastballs, the better, especially in modern pitching. The four-seamer, it might actually be a weapon for him next year instead of just being kind of a get-me-over pitch that he's thrown for a strike at times over the past 2 years. That could allow him to make even another step forward. Can he make more steps forward? I think he can. And that's maybe something that he could do next season to go along with the fact that that sinker was just kind of darting all over the place with good velocity when he was throwing it this year. But it wasn't all amazing stuff from Kyle Bradish. First and foremost, he only made 6 starts because there was injury. So let's talk about what went wrong for Bradish in 2025. That's coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Game Time. NFL season is back, and honestly, there is nothing better than being in a stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. So that's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, it's easy, and it's backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included. So the price you see is the price you pay. And Game Time's great because in just a couple of taps, I pull up Game Time and I see amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games for as low as $100 or less. And again, the app, it makes it super simple. You can even see the exact view from your seat before buying. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. So for Kyle Bradish, it was an awesome 6 starts for him this season, but let's talk about what went wrong. And obviously the big thing is that the Orioles did not have him for most of this season. That season debut came on August 26th for the Orioles when he made 6 starts to end the year after that. And maybe they would have rushed him back a little bit earlier had the Orioles been in the race. But of course, we know by mid-August, they were just simply not in any kind of playoff race. But coming off getting Tommy John and the internal brace surgery on that right elbow back in June of 2024, he only made 6 starts. So that is something that went wrong. You would have liked way more than 6 starts from Kyle Bradish this year. Now, would 30 Kyle Bradish starts have made the Orioles better? Yes. Would it have turned their season around? Probably not, because you can only pitch every 5th day, and there were a whole lot of other issues just besides the Orioles having or not having Kyle Bradish. Is he the best pitcher on this roster? Yes, he is. However, I don't think that would have fixed things. That's how bad things got in this 75-win season for the Orioles. I think the worst part really is for Bradish is that you lost almost 2 full seasons of him, right? He made only 8 starts in 2024 before getting the surgery, and then he comes back to make only 6 starts this year. I mean, even if you combine those two, 14 starts is barely half a season. Now, he still has 3 years of team control remaining. He's not a free agent until after the 2028 season, but those are precious years of a guy who finished 4th in Cy Young and was clearly your best starting pitcher on a team that over the last 2 years has struggled a bit with starting pitching. Then again, I mean, what pitcher at this point isn't losing 1 to 2 years of their career at some point due to injury? It seems like almost everybody's having something happen in their arm because that is just the state of pitching in Major League Baseball these days, but it still hurts to not have Bradish. And there was, the big conversation, we've hashed it out multiple times on this show about, why didn't Bradish just get the Tommy John, in spring training of 2024? Because he felt the injury pop up in the winter when he started his throwing program, I think in January maybe of 2024. He had the partial tear in there, but he decided instead of going with the Tommy John, he talked to doctors. He decided to go with the PRP injection, go with the rest. And then he came back and threw, and it allowed him to pitch. And he made 8 starts. Remember, Bradish was really good in those 8 starts. He had a 2.75 ERA in the 8 starts he made in 2024 before his season was over. And again, he talked about it. He's been very open about it that, hey, I wanted to pitch. He told us too, he had been pitching through a good amount of pain throughout the 2023 season. There was a lot of things he was doing just to be able to throw the ball every 5 days. He knew it was an issue. And that gives you a little more context on why, the pain became a little bit more in 2024, but why he didn't initially get the surgery. It shows you that he basically told us, hey, I was pitching through pain in 23. I figured, why can't I do it again until the doctors tell me I absolutely have to get the Tommy John no matter what? And they hadn't at that point. He was like, I'm going to pitch because I pitched through it before. I want to pitch. I'm going to do it again. And he threw the ball well. It's just that last start against the Phillies in, what was it, May or June of 2024, you could tell it got worse and the Tommy John was needed, and that's when he got it. And yes, had he gotten it in spring training or in February of 2024, he could have been back earlier, could have been back for, there's a chance he could have pitched most of the 2025 season. But again, does that change what happened to the Orioles this year? Probably gives them a few more wins, makes them a better team, but I don't think they get to the postseason just from having or not having Kyle Bradish. Again, there were other issues in play. Remember, it's partly his decision, not just the team's decision, and he was a big part of that decision to try and pitch in 2024. Just didn't work out. But hopefully, seeing those 6 starts this year and then him getting mostly a normal offseason makes him good to go in 2026. I think really the only one other thing that went wrong is the pure stuff plus numbers on his fastball were different this year. And I already talked about how the four-seam fastball shape was different, and hopefully that makes it better. Sinker velo was good. Opponents hit just 188 against it. It moved well. But he had only an 81 stuff plus on the four-seamer and an 85 on the sinker. Those numbers were 92 and 98 back in 2023. Now, it's only 6 starts, so you bring in some small sample size stuff there, but that's a little bit concerning. It's just something to monitor going forward. I mean, the stuff plus on the breaking balls, the curve and the slider, were both just as great as they were 2 years ago, but the fastball is just something to take a look at as he goes into 2026. And that's the final thing to get to. How much Kyle Bradish do the Orioles have next year? What are the biggest storylines for him for next season? That's coming up next. So for Kyle Bradish, the Orioles got 6 awesome starts this season, right? You look at those game logs. First start back, he punched out 10 in 6 innings against Boston. I mean, like, you miss this guy a lot. Punch outs 10, 5, 6, 9, 9, 8. He punched out 8 in 4 innings in his final start of the season on the final day. I mean, he's a special pitcher. So what are his biggest storylines heading into the offseason and into 2026? I think the first storyline is, can we get a full season out of Kyle Bradish? He's already been talking with the media pretty honest about some of the limits that he could have on his workload next year, which makes sense, right? He threw 168 2/3 innings in 2023 when he finished 4th in Cy Young. But then he threw only 39 1/3 innings in those 8 starts in 2024 before he got the surgery. And that's not going to put you on track to build yourself up and be a competitive starter. I guess he threw a little bit more, right? He threw 11 1/3 innings in the minors. So instead it was 50 2/3 total innings they threw in 2024. Still not a lot. And then between the 5 rehab starts and then the 6 major league starts he made this year, he threw a total of 54 innings in 2025. So basically very similar to the amount of innings he threw pre-injury in 24. As John Muley wrote about in the Baltimore Banner a couple of weeks ago, Bradish said, quote, this is Bradish's quote, "For myself, I would like to make 30 starts. Obviously, it's probably not going to be 6 innings each outing because that would be 180 innings, and that would not be very smart. But I think there's ways around it, and there's other ways to cut innings out somewhere. The Orioles know it. Mike Elias knows it. Kyle Bradish knows it. It is not probably smart to go from 50 innings, 54 innings, and then immediately to 180 innings that next year, that first season coming off of Tommy John. It's probably not going to happen. They're going to need to slow play him a bit at the beginning of the year. So I would not be surprised at all if the Orioles begin 2026 with a 6-man rotation. It allows them to utilize a little more of their depth, even if they bring in some other starting pitchers. Maybe it allows them to get Tyler Wells or Cade Povich or Brandon Young some starts in the rotation early, even if there are 5 starting pitchers on the team who are better, because they want to use a 6-man to help out Kyle Bradish and limit his innings. They're probably going to skip a couple of starts from Bradish in the first half of next year, when it works out for them and when there's an off day in the middle to not get the rotation in a bad spot or not put the bullpen in a bad spot. But they're probably going to skip some starts from him. Again, he's going to throw more than 100 innings, I'll tell you that. But is he going to throw much more than 150? Probably not. So will he make maybe 25 instead of 30 starts? Yes, but I think the big thing will be you want to make sure he's at full strength in September and October. So if you go for a 6-man rotation, you skip a couple of starts as the season goes on, you want to go like Dodgers level, where you make sure that in September, he's fully building himself up to every 5 days. And in October, he's ready to go and not on any kind of innings limit. But as he said, again, to go 50, 50, 180, that's just not going to happen. So I would think 130, 140, maybe 150 in innings. But the Orioles have to play that right to make sure a bigger chunk of them happen at the end of the season and into October, and that he's ready, hopefully, to make a longer October run with this Orioles team if they get in that position as well. And then really the other question is, would a full season be up to his level? He's made 14 starts since the injury in 2023, but also those 14 starts were even better than the numbers he put up in 2023. Now, we also learned how much pain he was in that season. So if he's now healthier, he's feeling better because of the injury, you extrapolate those 14 starts into a full season, he's once again a Cy Young contender and even maybe a better candidate than he was when he finished 4th 2 years ago. you still ask the question, though, like, how good can he be? Is there another level from a guy who had a 2.83 ERA in 30 starts 2 years ago? Maybe there is. I mean, to me, Kyle Bradish, who is just turned 29 years old in September, like the sky still feels like the limit for this guy, even coming off of major elbow surgery. That slider is ridiculous. It's good fastballs. It's a good curveball. He's got good command. He's got everything you want from a starting pitcher. There's room to add stuff. Like maybe he adds a changeup, right? He's a guy who, the way he kind of throws the ball, it makes it tough to add a change, but maybe he starts throwing a kick changeup, adds a fifth pitch, something that goes away from left-handers. That could make him even better. I mean, there are still ways for him to improve, and he's been, inning for inning, the best Orioles starting pitcher kind of since he came up to the big leagues, or at least since he added that sinker midway through 2022. If you've been listening to this show for a while, you know for a long time I've been a huge Kyle Bradish believer that he can be an ace of this staff. And that, I think, is the final question for him heading into 2026. Will he be asked to be the ace for this team? He has the talent to do it. He was the ace of a team that won 101 games and won the AL East 2 years ago. All right? He finished fourth in Cy Young. Like, this is not some sort of upstart story. This is a guy who you can expect to be really good. And I think more and more people know about Kyle Bradish. They might be reintroduced to him because they've barely seen him pitch over the past 2 years. But this is a dude. The Orioles have a capital D dude at the top of their rotation right now in Kyle Bradish. Like, even Orioles fans, I don't think realize how good Bradish can be, and honestly, how good he has been before this elbow issue. It's a legitimate number one. All right. As long as he seems to be good back from the surgery, he is a legitimate number one. The question is that what he's going to be asked to be on this Orioles team, or will there be more help around him, right? He's going to be limited next year. So even though he has the ability to be a true number one, they're not going to ask him for 200 innings. Maybe they ask him for that in 2027, but it's not going to happen in 2026. He's going to be building up to that. So there has to be other innings to go around for an ace-type pitcher. And yes, Trevor Rogers was great. And yes, I do trust Dean Kramer being in this rotation. But beyond that, there needs to be outside additions. And not just a 3 and 4 starter that are going to help us win. There needs to be a number one, another number one, along with Bradish added to this rotation. Whether it's a Framber Valdez or a Michael King or a Dylan Cease, or they find a trade partner and it's Pablo Lopez or a Joe Ryan or whomever it may be. And it's not just because, oh, this team needs starting pitching. It's also because Bradish is going to be a little limited, even though he has the ceiling of a number one. If you can pair Bradish with another true ace type guy, and then you have Rogers and you have Kramer and you have another free agent, you have potentially a Grayson Rodriguez at some point, you have the depth of the Wells and the Povich and the Brandon Youngs, you have a better rotation. And if you can have a number one with a Bradish, with a Rogers, that is a seriously good playoff rotation to have. Like, that is a seriously good. And that fourth guy is a Kramer, or, maybe is a Grayson, or is the other free agent you add, or someone you add at the trade deadline, or whoever it may be. Yes, there's questions about the offense, and that's outside of this Kyle Bradish episode, but that is a real rotation. But just like last year, it wasn't good enough to just say, oh, we have Eflin and Rodriguez. We have a number one after letting Corbin Burns walk. It's not good enough this year to say, oh, like Grayson's going to be healthy and Bradish is going to be healthy. We have our number ones. Go answer that question even before it's asked when the season starts. Go get another guy. You know what's better than having one ace-type pitcher in Kyle Bradish? Having two of them. You look at the teams that are in the World Series. Do the Dodgers just have one ace-type pitcher? No, they kind of have four. The Blue Jays have four? Probably not. But Savage is pitching well, and they've got Kevin Gausman on top of it, and they paid for Chris Bassett and Max Scherzer and Jose Barrios and these other guys to be in that rotation too. As I talked about on Friday's episode, kind of comparing the Blue Jays to what the Orioles can learn from them heading into 2026. Some of that is paying for pitching, to be around Kyle Bradish so that he can flourish in his limited innings, and another guy can flourish with more innings for the Orioles as well. Either way, I think it was a great sign how good Bradish looked in those 6 starts. And hopefully, even on a limited workload, that will continue into the version of Kyle Bradish we know and love into 2026. That'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. If you are a listener, also please subscribe, like the show, follow the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you leave a 5-star rating and a review, That really helps us out as well. And if you want to talk some ball, you want to ask some mailbag questions, Orioles questions, feedback on the show, whatever it may be, you can always email me, lockedonorioles@gmail.com. We will be back tomorrow. Not exactly sure what that episode is going to look like. Maybe we get some managerial news potentially this week. We're kind of waiting around for that. We'll see if the World Series is going to wrap up maybe, earlier rather than later this week. But we also got some more player reviews. We're going to talk a little bit later this week at some point. Like, are the Orioles going to carry a third catcher? Gary Sanchez didn't work out a lot. Maverick Hanley wasn't very good, but Alex Jackson kind of came out of nowhere to be really good. Would the Orioles consider carrying him on the roster alongside Basayo and Rutschman? That's coming up along with a lot more later this week on the show, starting with a Wednesday pod. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.